Chapter 1, The Echoes Before Her. Jonathan had always been fascinated by the mysteries hidden in the equations of quantum mechanics. Late nights at his cluttered desk, strewn with half-erased chalk equations, dog-eared papers citing Bell's theorem, and scribbled notes on non-locality, were his sanctuary. But of late, his haven of logic had become a stage for strange, unaccountable phenomena. It began subtly. On an ordinary Tuesday morning in his New York apartment, while reviewing the experimental data from his latest entanglement simulation, he found that objects around him behaved as if guided by an unseen hand. He'd opened his window to breathe in the city's noise, a dull cacophony of horns and footsteps, when he noticed something impossible, a single, vivid tulip resting on his sill. Its crimson petals were dewy and unnervingly perfect, as if it were planted there by a precise, deliberate design. Jonathan's first reaction was skepticism. "There's no reason for a flower to appear here," he murmured to himself. In the back of his mind, he compared the oddity to the phenomenon of spontaneous parametric downconversion, the quantum process that made photons appear in entangled pairs. Is it possible that an echo of that process had manifested in my life? He wondered. That afternoon, while poring over his research on quantum decoherence, he discovered yet another mystery, a handwritten note tucked beneath his coffee mug. The note's faded ink, penned in delicate cursive, posed a chilling question. "Do you believe in fleeting things?" He turned the note over in his trembling fingers, his heart quickening. The handwriting was not his own, it carried an intimacy, a gentleness that contradicted the cold logic of his calculations. Jonathan's mind raced. When he contacted his colleague, Professor Ashby, an eminent theorist of quantum reality, he half expected a scientific explanation. Over the phone later that evening, Professor Ashby's voice resonated with measured curiosity. "Jonathan, sometimes the universe speaks in riddles. I've been studying the EPR paradox, and you know how Einstein dismissed entanglement as spooky action at a distance. Yet here you are, encountering what seems like a physical manifestation of that spookiness." But Ashby's words did little to calm Jonathan's growing unease. As if echoing Ashby's sentiment, an omnipresent scent began to pervade his home, a soft, haunting aroma of lavender. It was both familiar and otherworldly, stirring in him memories he could not claim as his own. Even as he sat at his desk, tracing wave-like equations with his pen, he could swear the fragrance hovered near his paper, as if to whisper secrets long buried. Nighttime brought further disconcerting visions. In his dreams, he saw a mysterious woman standing in a moonlit garden surrounded by wilted roses and delicate blooms. In those dreams, her fingers lightly caressed the petals of a dying flower, her eyes full of sorrow and longing. Although the scene changed with each sleep cycle, sometimes she would appear in a dimly lit corridor, other times beneath clouds of swirling fog, the one constant was the profound connection he felt to her presence. One night, in the midst of a particularly vivid dream, she whispered his name. "Jonathan." He awoke with a start at precisely 6:17 a.m., his body slick with sweat and his heart pounding in chaotic beats. In the hazy early light of dawn, his senses screamed that something fundamental had shifted. As he shuffled into his small kitchen, he paused, something was unmistakably off. The air in the room seemed charged, like the blurred image of an electron in superposition. Then he saw it. A lone figure standing by the counter, shrouded in the soft light that filtered through the window. For a suspended moment, time itself appeared to falter. Before the rational part of his mind could process the impossibility, his eyes locked onto those of a woman. Her dark, intense eyes, framed by hints of weariness and quiet wisdom, met his, and for an instant, the room's silence pressed in around them like a cosmic command. Unable to tear his gaze away, Jonathan stammered, Who are you?" The woman's voice was as gentle as the rustle of silk in the wind. "Jonathan," she said, enunciating each syllable as though it were a sacred incantation. He felt as if she were simultaneously both a dream and a memory, and in that singular moment, the boundaries between observer and observed, between experiment and emotion, began to blur. But even as his scientific mind scrambled for explanations, something about quantum superposition and the collapse of the wave function. Another part of him recognized this as an echo of the very mysteries he had devoted his life to studying. In the minutes that followed, the woman stood silently, her gaze searching his face with an ineffable intensity. Jonathan could only manage a whisper. How is this possible? Her reply was enigmatic, as if carved from the very fabric of time. We are more intertwined than the equations show, Jonathan. The universe is not a cold machine, it feels, it speaks, and sometimes it unravels its secrets. And then, as suddenly as she had appeared, she was gone. One moment the faint aroma of lavender lingered in the air, remnants of her presence, and then there was nothing but the echo of a question and the quiet hum of the universe's dark symphony. For hours afterward, Jonathan sat motionless at his table, his thoughts assaulted by a torrent of conflicting emotions. Was the morning's apparition a mere hallucination brought on by exhaustion? Or had he inadvertently become privy to a phenomenon that defied the centuries of established theory? He scrawled notes onto blank pages, equations that twisted into spiral forms, questions about what it truly means for particles, and perhaps people, to be entangled beyond the limitations of space and time. He recalled the principles of quantum entanglement, how when particles interact, they share a state such that measuring the state of one instantly determines the state of the other, regardless of the distance between them. But this was different. It wasn't a laboratory experiment with photons or electrons, it was raw, inexplicable human experience. And yet, in his heart, an old and buried hope flickered, perhaps there was meaning to it all. A cosmic sign that the structure of reality was far more mysterious than the banal clockwork of ordinary life. Throughout that long day, he found himself engaging in an internal dialogue, a conversation with the universe itself. "What are you trying to tell me?" he would murmur, pacing the room. In the quiet moments, he could almost hear the faint cadence of the woman's voice, overlapping with the theoretical constructs of quantum uncertainty. It was as if Schrödinger's theory and the whispers of an unknown messenger had merged into a single, profound question: can the intangible forces that govern the subatomic realm also govern the heart? Jonathan's mind wandered to the experiments of Alain Aspect and the subsequent proofs that quantum entanglement was not mere theory but a tangible aspect of reality. But what if those same principles could, under extraordinary circumstances, create connections that spanned not only space but the very soul? He scribbled fervently. Perhaps our essence is not isolated. Instead, we are like entangled particles, inseparable, our states defined by the interplay of shared existence. In every flutter of a candle flame, every whispered note in a half-remembered melody, there might be a spark of connection. He spent that evening in restless reflection, half listening to an old vinyl record playing a haunting melody, half ruminating on the uncanny evidence of his ordeal. The crisp clarity of his scientific mind battled with the warmth of inexplicable emotion. Could it be that the enigmatic appearance in his kitchen was a sign, an entangled echo of some other existence, reaching through the void? By the time he retired for the night, Jonathan's thoughts coalesced into one overriding question: who was she? Though he had not yet learned her name beyond that single whispered utterance, her presence had seeded both terror and hope within him. The world had become a place of ghostly resonances, where the laws of physics intertwined with the delicate threads of fate, and he was caught, unwillingly, in that fragile mesh. In the still darkness before sleep reclaimed him, he vowed silently to search for answers. He would revisit his equations, re-examine his assumptions about the nature of reality, and perhaps, dare he think, seek out a deeper connection beyond mere chance. Unbeknownst to him, the universe, and that elusive, mysterious presence, was already setting in motion a chain of events that would irrevocably alter both his understanding of science and the course of his life. Chapter 2: The Ethereal Connection. While Jonathan toiled in his lonely Manhattan apartment, far across the mercurial tapestry of Eastern Europe, Elara stirred in her quaint Prague flower shop. Her days were filled with the gentle art of arranging blooms, tulips, roses, lilies, and alstroemeria, each chosen for the story they told. But over the past few weeks, an unexplainable sensation had crept into her life, mirroring the anomalies that now tormented Jonathan. Every morning, she would open her shop to a quiet street, where crisp air mingled with the scent of dew. Amidst the familiar rhythms of her work, Elara began to sense the impossible, a series of echoes, images and sounds that were not her own. During the stillness of early dawn, while she arranged a bouquet of lavender and daisies, she could almost hear laughter or soft whispers, echoes that felt as though they came from a distant memory. One particularly frigid morning, as she arranged a floral display in the window, she encountered a note taped to the glass. In spidery handwriting, the note read, "We are more entwined than you know." Her heart skipped. For reasons she could not articulate, the words resonated deep within her, stirring emotions that were both tender and strange. Was it some elaborate prank from a colleague? Or, more unsettling still, a message from an otherworldly connection? That day, as soft snow began to fall over the narrow cobbled streets of Prague, Elara found herself pausing in her work, holding the note close, her eyes misted as she whispered, "Who?" Across the vast chasm of geographical and existential distance, Jonathan's mind kept returning to that image, the gentle authority of a woman who spoke softly of fate and quantum entanglement. In quiet moments, while laboring over his notes and rereading the cryptic note from his own morning, he sensed that he was not alone. On his computer screen, between lines of indecipherable code simulating entangled particles, sometimes words would flicker, almost like a hidden message embedded in the digital noise. Late one night, while immersed in his calculations about non-locality and Bell's inequality, Jonathan's phone buzzed unexpectedly. The screen displayed an unknown number. The message was brief, yet laden with meaning. "I feel you. I see you, even when you are worlds away." His blood ran cold. For a moment, his rational mind scrabbled to dismiss it as a technical glitch or a deliberate but morbid hoax. And yet, somewhere deep inside, he recognized the cadence, the cryptic beauty of the message. It echoed the soft invitation of that mysterious presence from his kitchen, an invitation to step beyond the confines of ordinary perception. Over the following days, a series of such messages dripped into his life with eerie regularity. Sometimes they arrived as simple affirmations, "I hear your heartbeat in the silence," or "Your voice lingers on my tongue," and other times as overt questions about the nature of existence. At first, he responded hesitantly, unsure whether to believe that these were nothing more than algorithmic errors or the remnants of a dream. But as the messages continued, he began to reply, each conversation an ephemeral dance of words that bridged the physical distance between New York and Prague. Their dialogue, transmitted through the medium of texts and fleeting phone calls in dead hours, became a lifeline, a shared exploration of a reality that defied classical explanation. One chilly evening, alone with his thoughts and a half-finished cup of coffee, Jonathan typed a reply. "I'm here. I feel the pull of something that I cannot name. Are you there?" Minutes later, a response came, delicate yet firm. "Yes. I am here. It is as if my thoughts are drifting on a quantum wave, connecting with yours. I've read about entanglement in a lab, but this is something far deeper." Their words were interspersed with heavy sighs, hesitant pauses, and a mutual acknowledgement that the very fabric of their experience was threaded with the principles of quantum physics. Jonathan found himself quoting lines from books on quantum field theory while Elara responded with metaphors drawn from the delicate beauty of her flowers. "Each petal," she wrote one night, "is like a state in superposition, fragile, uncertain, yet full of potential. When observed, it collapses into reality. And for a moment, I see your face in every bloom." In turn, Jonathan replied, "It is as if our souls are the particles of a grand experiment. When we are unaware, we exist in a haze of possibilities. But when fate, or perhaps quantum mechanics, forces our observation, everything collapses into certainty." Their dialogue, rich with scientific allusions, gradually transformed from tentative musings to heartfelt confessions. Even as they debated nuances, such as the implications of decoherence on personal identity or the philosophical weight of Schrödinger's cat, they began to reveal the secrets of their inner lives. Jonathan spoke of long nights spent alone with equations that offered no comfort, and Elara shared stories of arranging bouquets that spoke silently of her yearning for connection amid the cold precision of daily ritual. Yet, there was an undercurrent of trepidation. Though their words danced gracefully across the digital divide, neither could shake the sense that there was danger hidden in this quantum intimacy, a force that might one day rend their fragile connection asunder. One dialogue, preserved like a mantra on Jonathan's notepad, read: Jonathan, Elara, every time I feel this surge of understanding between us, like a direct transmission, I wonder if it is not a blessing, but a warning. What if our connection is predestined to shatter the very nature of our realities? Elara, I've felt that fear too. In the quiet moments, I sense that we are borrowing time from a universe that does not want us intertwined for long. Yet, I cannot help but cling to this, clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, this connection is our destiny rather than our doom. Their telephonic exchanges were punctuated with extended silences, lengthy pauses where each meditated on the cosmic irony that two souls, separated by oceans and traditions, could be so intimately bound by the peculiar laws of quantum entanglement. They debated fiercely and tenderly, was the universe orchestrating their meeting, or were they merely two lost particles destined to collide in a realm that defied classical physics? As the days passed, the intensity of their interactions grew. Jonathan found himself drafting an entire paper on interpersonal quantum entanglement in his mind, a theoretical construct that blurred the line between science and art, between the deterministic formulas of nature and the chaotic beauty of human emotion. In one particularly impassioned late-night message, he wrote: Imagine, he typed, if every time we exchanged a thought, our neural states were as entangled as distant photons. Each ripple in my mind answered by one in yours, regardless of the vast gulf between us. Perhaps our emotions are a quantum code, one that reveals itself only when we synchronize our observations. Elara responded with heartfelt poetry. In the silent garden of my days, I nurture the petals of hope even as the wind of uncertainty blows. Every thought of you is a seed, carried on the quantum breeze, destined to bloom in the fragile light of our shared existence. In these exchanges, the scientific and the poetic merged into an undying dialogue, a conversation that transcended traditional boundaries and whispered of a destiny written in the language of the cosmos. Yet, despite the comfort of these shared intimacies, a profound loneliness persisted in both hearts. They were, after all, still separated by countless kilometers, residing in different cities where the laws of everyday life reigned. The enigmatic connection they had discovered, so at home in the realm of electron spins and quantum probabilities, remained stubbornly intangible when measured against the recollections of daily reality. That night, as rain began to patter gently on the windowpanes in both New York and Prague, Jonathan stared out into the darkness and whispered into the silence, Elara, I can almost feel you here. It's as if every drop of rain carries your essence. Miles away, in her shop, Elara pressed her ear against a rain-speckled window, closing her eyes to feel that same inexplicable warmth, that mysterious pull that defied explanation. In these moments, their dialogue became not merely an exchange of words but a lifeline, a tether anchoring them to the possibility that they were not random, isolated phenomena, but rather key components in a grand, entangled narrative of the universe. And as the days bled into weeks, both Jonathan and Elara began to accept a disquieting truth: their connection, perhaps governed by the laws of quantum mechanics, was both wondrous and terrifying. A delicate dance on the edge of known reality, where every observation brought clarity yet risked the collapse of infinite potential. Chapter 3: The Absence and the Persistent Signal. In the wake of these uncanny communications, a strange period of absence befell both Jonathan and Elara, a lull that was as unsettling as it was profound. Although their daily routines continued in the familiar rhythm of their respective lives, the ethereal connection continued to pulse at the edges of their awareness. It was as if a distant radio signal, carrying the frequencies of an infinite chorus, echoed quietly beneath the surface of their thoughts. Jonathan, once so consumed by the pursuit of scientific certainties, now found himself adrift in a sea of doubts and half-remembered intuitions. The hours he once devoted to his research became punctuated by moments of stark loneliness. Yet even in that solitude, he could feel the distant resonance of Elara's presence. On many nights, when the city's clamor softened into the hum of distant traffic and the shuddering pulse of midnight trains, a sudden chill would grip him, a subtle indication that somewhere far away, someone was experiencing the same ache of absence. One particularly lonely evening, as he sat at his desk revising the proofs of an article on non-locality, his phone buzzed unexpectedly. It was not one of the earlier messages but a longer transmission, one that read almost like a soliloquy on isolation and interconnected fate. Jonathan, I wake each morning to the familiar routine, the rustle of fresh produce in the market outside my shop, the soft clink of porcelain cups as I pour tea for a customer, but in the quiet spaces, I sense a vast emptiness. It is as though the universe has taken something away, leaving a resonant void that only your voice seems capable of filling. He stared at the message, heart pounding with renewed hope and uncertainty. It reminded him vividly of those early hours, before the apparition, before the flood of coincidences, when he could still distinguish between science and emotion. Clutching that message close, he dialed the unknown number in an effort to recapture even a fraction of the connection they had briefly shared. The call rang several times before an automated message returned, telling him that the line was temporarily unreachable. Desperate not to lose this link, he decided to write a response. Under the warm glow of a desk lamp, his fingers danced over the keyboard, forming words that bridged the gap between theory and feeling. Elara, every moment without hearing from you feels like a quantum collapse, a measurement that forces an unwanted reality. I study entanglement to understand the subatomic, yet here I find that our souls are woven together in the same invisible tapestry. Please, tell me you feel the same pull, the unyielding whisper of fate that lingers in the spaces between us. Miles away, in the quiet recesses of her flower shop after closing, Elara read his message aloud under a soft, wavering light. In the solitude of her back room, she crumpled her hands over a small vase holding a dying rose, and spoke softly. Yes, Jonathan. I feel it in every breath, in every petal that falls. It is as if I live on the edge of a dream, and in that dream, you are my only certainty. Their dialogue continued sporadically over the ensuing days. Both would catch fleeting moments in their routines that seemed to trigger the synesthetic merger of two distant lives. Jonathan, while attending a conference call with fellow researchers, found himself distracted by an urge to recall a lullaby he didn't remember learning, until he realized, with a start, that it was the same melody Elara had mentioned in one of her texts. Elara, on a slow afternoon arranging a border of fresh marigolds outside her window, suddenly recalled a passage from a paper on quantum decoherence that Jonathan had written, its precise wording echoing in her mind like a tender refrain. These moments were interjected with long passages of dialogue, messaging sessions where they discussed the minutiae of quantum entanglement. In one such exchange, Jonathan wrote, I am haunted by the principles that govern the universe. Wave functions collapsing before our eyes, probabilities that speak of infinite possibilities that vanish the moment we attempt to observe them. And yet, our connection continues to exist in that uncertain state, a superposition of hope and despair. Elara answered with a measured tone that resonated with both scientific understanding and heartfelt longing. I often think of the dual nature of light, the way it can exist as both a particle and a wave. Perhaps we, too, exist in a dual state, both separate and intertwined, our identities blurred by the very act of connection. In every flower I tend, in every note that passes the silence, I sense the echo of your thought. Their conversations gradually turned into philosophical debates, blending cold scientific accuracy with the fiery passion of human longing. They explored dark topics, such as the possibility that, in attempting to observe their entangled states, they might inadvertently force a collapse that could sever their connection forever. In one particularly intense midnight dialogue, Jonathan questioned, what if, by the very act of reaching out and acknowledging our bond, we are triggering a collapse that leaves only one possible outcome, a universe where we are forever apart? Elara's reply, fraught with both conviction and melancholy, came slowly. I've seen blooming gardens turn to wilted graves in a single moment. Yet I believe that without the darkness, the light would be meaningless. Our existence may be as uncertain as the outcome of a quantum measurement, but even the flicker of hope is worth living for. Their mutual discussion of quantum phenomena was not merely academic. It was a lifeline to understanding the overwhelming loneliness that accompanied every moment of separation. Jonathan began to annotate his research with personal notes that referenced Alara's words, scribbling in the margins, "The potential of our connection is as profound as a superposition, both agonizing and beautiful." Meanwhile, Alara found herself incorporating the cryptic language of quantum theory into the poetry that she inscribed on handwritten notes, which she tucked into bundles of freshly cut blossoms. Yet, even as their intellectual and emotional exchange deepened, a gnawing anxiety began to set in. Both sensed that the persistent signal, whatever its origin, was not entirely benign. There were nights when each awoke with a sense of dread, a premonition that time was running out, that the universe was orchestrating a final experiment. Jonathan's dreams turned increasingly vivid and unsettling. He dreamed of vast laboratories where gigantic instruments measured not just particles, but emotions. He dreamed of a cosmic void in which he and a spectral woman floated as two isolated quanta drifting irreversibly apart. Alara's dreams, in contrast, were filled with florid images of gardens that morphed into labyrinths, of roses whose petals shimmered with numbers and formulas, a symphony of nature and science in which each bloom was a reminder of both connection and loss. Through it all, their dialogue, rich in scientific jargon and drenched in personal passion, served as the sole tether holding them together across the distances. The quantum entanglement they experienced was a bittersweet reminder that every observation, every interaction, was a measurement that both defined and constrained them. And as the persistent signal pulsed quietly in the background of their lives, both Jonathan and Alara began to sense that their fates were drawing inexorably toward a point of convergence, even as the forces of the universe conspired to keep them apart. Chapter 4: The Forced Convergence. When the invitation arrived, it was as if the universe had finally decided to speak in definitive terms. Jonathan received an unexpected message, a formal invitation to a global scientific conference to be held in Prague. The subject line, glowing on his computer screen, read: "Connecting Minds, Global Science Summit 2025. For a moment, he stared in disbelief. Meetings and summits were ordinarily reserved for the established elite of theoretical physics, and he had never considered himself part of that circle. Yet there, embedded in the list of attendees, was a name that sent his heart racing anew: Alara Varga. He remembered every word they had exchanged, the poetic mathematics of their connection, the quiet dialogues that blurred the boundaries between theory and emotion. The invitation was evidence that the cosmos itself was maneuvering events with an inexorable precision. It was as if the quantum forces that had once sent random notes and cryptic texts were now arranging a grand convergence. Over the next few days, Jonathan wrestled with a chaotic mix of anticipation and dread. In a series of fevered conversations with his colleagues, he sought both counsel and validation. One evening in the lab, as the soft glow of monitors illuminated his furrowed brow, he confided in his closest friend, Dr. Mehta. "Jonathan, I know this sounds preposterous, but I've been receiving messages, a voice, a presence that seems to communicate with me across unimaginable distances. And now, they're connecting me to a conference in Prague. I swear, Mehta, it's as if the very fabric of reality is contracting around me." Dr. Mehta, with a skeptical smile: "Jonathan, you know how these things go. Our minds are prone to weaving patterns from chaos. But if there's even a kernel of truth to what you're saying, quantum entanglement isn't the sort of phenomenon that simply fades away. It latches on, persists through decoherence. Perhaps this is your universe saying, 'I have more in store for you.'" That night, as Jonathan lay awake, images of elongated corridors filled with arrays of scientific instruments danced before his eyes. He recalled the long nights of poring over Bell's inequality and the mind-bending implications of non-local communication. Every thought of Alara, her gentle words, the soft scent of lavender, the phantom caress of her presence, seemed to align with the equations that now dominated his every waking thought. In Prague, preparations for the summit were in full swing. Back in her flower shop, Alara experienced a similar inner tumult. The invitation had come through a trusted colleague, a scientist passionate about the intersection of nature and quantum phenomena. Your insights would add a unique dimension to our panel discussions, the invitation read. For Elara, who had come to believe that her art and her subconscious awareness were richer than mere chance, this was no ordinary meeting. It was an inevitable collision of destinies. Still, the looming prospect of traveling to a foreign land, of stepping out from the comforting anonymity of her beloved shop, filled her with trepidation. Late at night, while arranging a bouquet for a dear friend, she found herself murmuring to the empty room. If we are truly entangled, Jonathan, then the cosmos has woven us so that apart is not an option. I must be brave enough to follow this path, even if it leads me into the unknown. The days preceding the conference were charged with an electric anticipation that seemed almost palpable. Jonathan began to experience moments of déjà vu at an almost unbearable frequency, a glimpse of Prague's skyline in the shimmer of a night traffic stream, or the brush of a stranger's hand that sent a jolt of recognition through his veins. His internal dialogue, a constant monologue of quantum theories and passionate longing, reached fever pitch as he prepared for the journey that might finally reunite him with the elusive voice from his dreams. In a series of extended late-night phone conversations, the duo debated the nature of their interactions with a fervor that defied the rational world. In one memorable dialogue, while Jonathan packed his suitcase in his sterile New York apartment, he confessed. "Elara, every moment I spend here feels like a measurement, a collapse of an otherwise infinite state of potential. I wonder if our connection is like that of entangled particles, constant until an observation forces a reality into being. I'm not sure if I'm terrified of the outcome, or if I'm simply overwhelmed by the chance that we might, finally exist together." Elara's response, soft and resonant through the static of a long-distance call, was tinged with both hope and resigned melancholy. "I feel it too, Jonathan. It's as if the universe is performing an experiment with our lives. I've spent so long tending to my flowers, each blossom a silent testament to life's fragility, only to realize that I've been waiting for someone to show me that even in the chaos of quantum uncertainty, there can be moments of profound beauty. Perhaps this conference is our moment of collapse into reality." Their dialogues were interwoven with references to the great experiments and thought experiments of modern physics, discussions of EPR paradoxes, of wave function collapse, and the eerie notion of spooky action at a distance. Every exchanged word reinforced the idea that fate, or perhaps the underlying mathematics of the cosmos, had conspired to bring them together. And though both dreaded the moment their long-distance voices would finally give way to physical presence, they couldn't ignore the magnetic pull that urged them onward. As the day of departure neared, Jonathan felt an increasing pressure, as if every decision he made was preordained by the very equations he had spent years studying. In a moment of quiet introspection, while watching rain streak down his window, he jotted in his battered journal. "If we are truly entangled, then each quantum of my being vibrates in response to hers. The uncertainty principle may govern the behavior of particles, yet my heart defies uncertainty when it comes to the pull I feel, a force that binds me to Elara, no matter the distance. I must go to Prague, I must see if our wave functions can finally collapse into a shared reality." Thus, with a heavy heart and a mind swirling with anticipation of both wonder and terror, Jonathan booked his flight. Unbeknownst to him, every decision, every calculated risk, was the universe's way of orchestrating the inevitable collision, a forced convergence that would test the very limits of what he believed possible. Chapter 5, The Collision of Forces. The conference hall in Prague was a vast, modern space that buzzed with the energy of ideas and discovery. Scientists, philosophers, and enthusiasts of every stripe had gathered under one roof, each eager to share in the collective quest for truth. Here, the arcane principles of quantum physics were not abstract but pulsed with life, and it was within this charged milieu that fate would finally command its reckoning. Jonathan arrived early, his senses heightened by the confluence of academic ambition and a deep, personal longing. Every display, every diagram on the walls of the hall reminded him of the intricate networks that connected the smallest particles of existence. Yet his eyes were drawn to something, or rather, someone, beyond the formal presentations, a soft glow, a presence that seemed to defy the sterility of the conference's scientific coldness. Across the room, in a quiet corner festooned with vibrant bouquets and subtle hints of lavender, stood Elara. Though their previous communications had been mediated through texts and distant phone calls, this was the first time Jonathan beheld her in the flesh. And in that instant, as if the chaos of quantum fluctuations condensed into meaning, the two locked eyes. The transition was instantaneous. The ambient chatter in the hall seemed to fade into a muted hum, leaving only the inexorable throb of their shared heartbeat. Jonathan's mind reeled, each thought, each memory, surged forth with the clarity of a well-collapsed wave function. It was as if every ingredient of the universe had conspired to summon this moment, a grand convergence so sudden and powerful that for a heartbeat, time itself appeared to cease. "Elara," Jonathan breathed, the sound reverberating in the silent space between them. His voice was both a question and a declaration. A distilled essence of all the uncertainty and passion that had simmered for so long. She smiled, and in that small, ephemeral gesture, the weight of all their alienated days melted away. "Jonathan," she replied softly, her tone at once barely a whisper and yet as resonant as a quantum harmonic oscillator. "We finally meet." Their first exchange was a tumultuous burst of dialogue, a nearly simultaneous outpouring of gratitude, wonder, and scientific curiosity. Jonathan stepped forward, his words laced with reverence and awe. "For years, I have observed the patterns of the universe through cold equations, believing that the randomness of chaos was the only truth. But standing here with you, it's as though every unsolved integral in my soul has found its answer. I can feel your presence in a way that defies every law I thought immutable. It's as if the universe, in all its vast complexity, has allowed our wave functions to collapse into one focused reality." Elara's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she replied, her words measured and tender. "I spent my life surrounded by the beauty of transient blooms, each flower a fleeting masterpiece, a momentary state of perfect probability. And in my solitude, I would often wonder if there was someone out there who understood that even the ephemeral held an eternal significance. Now, with you here, every petal, every whispered memory, sings of our connection. I feel as though we are two entangled particles, destined to merge each time the system is observed." In that charged moment, the assembled world blurred away. Their conversation wove between the language of science and the poetry of the heart, discussing quantum decoherence as if it were the sorrow of parting and non-locality as the irrepressible pull of destiny. They recalled every cryptic message, every sleepless night pondering the mysteries of the cosmos, and realized that what they shared was not mere coincidence but an intricate convergence of matter and meaning. As they drew closer, their voices lowered to a private cadence amid the bustling conference. Jonathan's hand brushed against hers, and in that contact, he felt the unmistakable jolt of an unseen force, a physical manifestation of the entanglement he had studied for so long. It was as if 1,000 electrons had synchronized their spin just for that moment. He leaned in, marveling at the strangeness of fate. "For all my life, I have clung to the certainty of numbers and formulas. Yet nothing in the realm of physics could have predicted this cosmic synergy, this meeting. It is terrifying and beautiful, like the collapse of 1,000 possibilities into one undeniable truth." Elara's whisper was barely audible, yet it carried the full weight of her conviction. "Maybe it is not just physics that defines us. Perhaps in every quantum fluctuation, in every ripple of time, there is a chance for transcendence, a chance to share our souls despite the odds. In you, I see the embodiment of that hope." Around them, the conference hall continued its formal proceedings, presentations on quantum algorithms, debates on the nature of reality, discussions of the latest particle collider results. But for Jonathan and Elara, the world had narrowed to the silent language of entwined souls and measured heartbeats. Every glance, every trembling word, was laden with the evidence of their entangled destinies. In one final exchange that seemed to encapsulate the incredible journey of separation, longing, and scientific wonder that had brought them together, Jonathan murmured, "I have spent endless nights wrestling with the paradox of observation, that by merely witnessing, we fix reality into a single state, as if sealing off infinite other possibilities. Tonight, I embrace all those uncertain possibilities, for in the collapse of the wave, I find solace in the fact that our existence, however fleeting or mysterious, is real. I will never let this moment go. Elara, with tears glistening in her eyes, replied. Our union is the culmination of every unanswered question, every spectral coincidence. Though the universe may work in probabilities, today it has given us certainty, a certainty that even in the unpredictable dance of quantum states, there lies an eternal, unyielding harmony between us. And so, under the charged atmosphere of that grand summit, where ideas and matter intertwined, Jonathan and Elara embraced as though they had been separated since the dawn of time. The collision of their forces, science and soul, theory and desire, became a singular event that redefined not just their lives but the very nature of destiny itself. In that moment, the rules governing the cosmos seemed to yield to the enigmatic power of connection, affirming that even in a universe ruled by uncertainty, love and wonder remained constants. This concludes The Entangled Ones. I hope you enjoy this journey into a world where the boundaries between science and romance collapse under the weight of a connection as inexplicable as it is profound.